We don't have that option, right? So I'm really excited to be here today. This is actually the first time that I've ever met Ernie. So hi, Ernie. How you doing?
Good to meet you, Zach.
Jennifer and I have interacted a little bit through some webinar stuff. So I'm really excited to introduce her here in a second. Um, I will say I'll echo that this documentary is probably one of the most important movies of my life, because if it wasn't for the documentary and the things that Ernie and Joe have done, it wouldn't have gotten me interested in crisis intervention, and that's literally changed everything about how I do my job. You know, it was said in my bio, which I didn't realize they were going to read the whole thing, or I would have made it much shorter. So I apologize. But it was said that I have a degree in theater, and I went into law enforcement because it was honestly was a pension and insurance, and I didn't really know where I fit in. And then I found CIT, and I realized how important it is, and it's really an opportunity to affect change and help people. So if you get a chance to watch the whole 90 minutes, please do. You will not regret it. Um, I'm not sure if I don't think Jennifer's video is working.
Yeah,
But
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about that. I have a shoulder length Auburn hair. I'll leave it at that. But I'm so happy. I apologize about the camera issues, but I'm very, very happy to be here. And I love what you just said, Zach, because that's a big reason I made the film, was to kind of, I love this idea of cross-pollination and getting different groups who care, just to understand that there's other ways to do this or do things in general. And I just have to tell you, I got the most amazing email from a officer in Pennsylvania who saw the film. His father's a retired psychologist and happened to see it on HBO on a free weekend, called his son, who is a cop, and said, you have to sit, you've got to find this film and sit and watch it now. It's free this weekend. So he did, and he wrote to this beautiful, like multi-paragraph email saying he was a film major. Because when you said theater, I had to tell you, a film major in college, and one thing lends to other. He ends up as an officer in the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania. And just, I think storytelling spoke to him, probably like it does to you as a theater major, this idea of telling story and making change through telling story. And now he's like, just percolating with amazing good ideas to do in the Lehigh Valley. So I just had to share that story with you, because that's exactly what we hope the film will do. So.
And that is the power, honestly, of bringing something that isn't a mainstream idea into a 90-minute documentary, is it gives so much more access to everybody that they wouldn't have had before. So you've obviously just heard from Jenifer McShane. She's the director of the film. She's the reason the film exists. If she wouldn't have decided to tell this story, we wouldn't have gotten to meet Ernie and Joe. Joe has popped in here. I'm going to leave him till last because I know him and I'm not nearly as excited to meet him. But Ernie Stevens is here. Obviously, Ernie is one of the subjects of the film. Like I said before, I'm really excited to meet Ernie because we haven't had the opportunity to speak ever before. And I want to introduce you guys to Ernie and give Ernie just a couple seconds just to kind of say why CIT is important to him, and then we'll get back around to ideas and things. But I at least want Ernie to be able to say hi first, and then we'll get going.
Thank you, Zach. First of all, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me on. And, being a part of NAMI here in San Antonio, I was a board of director for many years, and I know the film had a very traumatic opening. So I just want to remind everybody that's watching this, all the participants, that NAMI is your family, NAMI is your support group. And, we hope that this film, of course, fosters discussion, but at the same time, if it brought up any feelings that may be difficult to deal with right now, remember that your NAMI family loves you and supports you. So please reach out to them if you need to. As far as CIT, Zach, it was important to me because I connected with the community in a way I'd never done before. An individual came, as you saw in the film, Janine Owens came and talked to the class, and she really changed my perspective of what community-oriented policing really was, and the connection that the community needed from the police department, and where we were falling short. And part of that was providing mental health services to the community. So it became a passion of mine, and I never looked back. It changed my entire career path from what I was doing into what I'm doing now. So thank you again for having me on.
Excellent. And you made a very important point, is that how it gives a better way to give outreach to the community and to make a big difference. You know, we see, you know, how many cop shows are there on TV? How many cop movies are there? And you see a very narrow amount of what police work is. And by seeing something like this documentary and seeing how CIT works, now you really see how the community can benefit. You know, honestly, I joke all the time, anybody can arrest somebody. It's really easy. You just say, hey, these are the 3 criteria that it meets. Now you're going to jail. Really, really easy. It's a lot harder to help somebody because you have to establish trust. You have to make them believe that you're legitimately looking out for their best interests. And I think by everything that you guys showed in the documentary, that really opens people's eyes up to realizing, especially in these very complicated times, that, you know, police do have another ability to serve their community.
Right.
So I'm glad that you brought that up, Ernie.
Yeah. And I think it's important for the community. Sorry, I think it's important for the community to see that. You know, when I started making the film, it was already incredible polarization between community and in certain parts of the country and certain states, certain communities. So this gives a window into seeing it through their eyes, which we're rarely ever given a chance unless it's a very exploitive show that shows nothing but the kind of high adrenaline moments. So anyway, I'll shut up.
Well, no, don't shut up. Absolutely not. You're my hero, Jenifer. You know this, right? You don't shut up at all. Anytime you want to add something, you jump in. This would not have ever happened without you. So you make a really good point in the fact that the one thing that this nation is not particularly good at doing is humanizing everyone, right? And in order to humanize people, you have to see where they're coming from. You have to seek empathy and a certain amount of understanding. And again, the documentary shows these 2 guys as humans and people that are striving to do the right thing, which is a great segue into Joe Smarro, because full disclosure, I've known Joe for probably about 3 or 4 years now, and I bust his chops every chance that I get. So while it was
So you and Ernie have something in common then.
Yeah, good. Good. And while it's been my dream to meet Ernie because I look up to him, luckily I can look maybe parallel or to Joe. So now I've met a hero, and now I have to talk about Joe. So Joe Smarro, I first met him through when he and his partner in his business, Solution Point Plus, Jesse, came to Blackhawk County where I work and gave just a 2-day, 16-hour CIT, just quick and dirty, you know, no role plays, nothing fancy. And we got to know each other and became friends. And through that, we've worked very closely together. And I always joke that we text back and forth like 16-year-old girls. So I have to give that full disclosure because I'm not exactly an uninvolved participant. So it is my honor and pleasure to unleash on society for this moment, Joe Smarro. Joe, why don't you talk to them a little bit about where you come from and how CIT jumped into your life?
Yeah, I come from my mother. And, you know, I have been involved with CIT for, I think 2009 is when I got on the unit. So my last 11 years on the department, I was on the mental health unit. And obviously it was a big part of kind of what kept me sane as a police officer, and it was really it was something that I became incredibly passionate about, to where I did start a business on the side back in 2017, and Iowa was second home to me. I mean, I go back there several times a year, and you know, I give a lot of credit to the work, specifically of the behavioral health regions, of the amount of buy-in that they've had with this. And like Zach said, I mean, we came out there and did a couple 2 days just to introduce the concepts. Then they brought us back for the 40-hour. But you know, I've been very, very blessed to work with incredible people in Iowa. And like Zach mentioned, I've even, because of the model and the way it is, again, my goal is never to show up somewhere provide a training and then like take it all away with me. My goal is to say, hey, you to do this on your own. And that's what we're doing up in Black Hawk with Zach, so he can take it on. But I also have him travel with us whenever we do schools in other parts of Iowa, which has been great. And so, but I'm super excited about this group specifically because I do give them like 95% of credit for my business being as successful as it is because of the amount of experience I got in Iowa. And a huge part of that is because of incredible people like Jenifer Robbins with South Central Behavioral Health Region, and then people like Zach and Tony, the sheriff up in Black Hawk, Darcy Alt now out in the heart of Iowa region. And so really just getting to work with really good people and who have bought into these concepts. And so, to me, it's life's work at this point is helping first responders see a better alternative to the way they've been trained to maybe do things traditionally.
Excellent. We did have a question pop up, which reminder to, if you have questions for the Q&A for the last 15, 20 minutes of the panel, make sure that you're getting them in the Q&A section. But I did see a question pop up that did I miss the explanation of what CIT means, which is kind of important. Crisis Intervention Training is what CIT stands for. And we'll use that acronym a lot because it's a lot shorter than saying Crisis Intervention Training. So it is, Joe talked a little bit about how going out and training outside of the state of Texas happened. But I think really to get a real grasp, especially about the documentary, we need to go backwards a little bit and we need to talk about how, Jenifer, how did you get hooked up with Ernie and Joe, and how did they become the focus of this film that would go on to win an Emmy? I mean, it's kind of neat to think this happened. How did you guys all get hooked up together?
Well, it started, I think the original start in my brain was when I finished my last film, was about mothers in a maximum security prison in Bedford Hills, New York. And I think what I've realized over time when I look back at what things I've worked on, I think what appeals to me are stories that are unexpected, where hopeful, smart things are happening in ways you don't expect. Like women trying to become better mothers while they're doing their max sentence in a max prison. Like officers taking the role to protect and serve and taking it to a level that is much more holistic and humanity-based. So a woman who actually ended up being a friend, or was a friend at the time, who wrote a great piece on how San Antonio was kind of dealing with these bigger issues, jail diversion and economic savings by making these changes. And one of the groups that she talked about in this article, it was a large article, was the mental health unit. And like bells went off the moment I read it. And someone had sent it to me. I didn't get it from her. Someone sent it to me, just knowing my interest from the last film. And I read it, and so I wrote her a note and just said, "This is great. Like, we need more of this, and bravo. And I'm glad you wrote this story." And that was it. And wasn't really thinking about a film. And she wrote back because she had seen Mothers of Bedford and said, maybe the time might be right for like your kind of style of project. And I was like, yeah, maybe it would be. But who knows if, my concern was, if I was going to do something like that, I wanted it to be immersive. And like I just said, I wanted it to be through the eyes of law enforcement. And so, was it what I thought it was when I read this article? Because you read articles all the time and then you get there and you're like, eh. So I went, and without my camera, which Ernie and Joe, I think, thought was a little odd for a filmmaker to show up without a camera. But I showed up and I drove around just watching. I said very little. In fact, I remember like on the second day, Joe was like, "So what is up?" Because I wasn't really saying anything, because I find even when I'm making the film, I try to kind of be a little reserved, which is actually not really who I am, but I try to stay back because I don't want to influence what's happening. I'm trying to observe what's happening. And I was so impressed. I thought, this is the real deal. Like, this is really, and they were taking so much time, and I just thought, this is really it. And then I had to kind of come back and figure out how I was going to do it and pay for it. And once it was clear to me that there was a story there, it was worth telling. I didn't think it had been told before, and that I had found two subjects when I met Ernie and Joe, and those who I drove around with those days, if they were willing to do this, I had met two subjects that could really carry 90 minutes. Like, you could spend 90 minutes with these people, and they were different enough that, they came to CIT from very different ways. And I thought that was really important because not everyone has Joe's backstory, but it doesn't mean they can't do CIT and vice versa. And so that was really important to me. So anyway, sorry, you got to cut me off anytime, Zach. It's like talking about my third child.
I'm only going to cut you off if you stop saying if you start saying uninteresting things, and we haven't gotten there yet. So as you're getting this all put together, Jenifer, I have to imagine, knowing cops and knowing bureaucracy and stuff, there had to have been some challenges in making the film. Like, what were some of the challenges to putting this all together and getting it to be a cohesive thing and a story that you could tell? What were the hurdles?
Yeah, well, I have to tell you, access was actually not the hurdle. It was what I expected. I thought it was going to be, because I just finished this project 5 years in a maximum security prison where it was a nightmare. Like, just getting in every time was a nightmare. And after a while, I think I just unintentionally wore them down. They're like, oh dear God, she's back again. Like, just let her in. And so I was expecting that with SAPD. But my main contact in their press office really understood what I was trying to do, understood that this was a story that I wanted to be smart and hopeful, like that it could be both things. And I wasn't setting out to do a gotcha story. I really wanted to understand how this works. And he realized that, I think, and understood and trusted Ernie and Joe to like let me just hang around a lot. So that was not the problem that I had. I think the biggest challenge, going into it, I was so worried about claustrophobia for the viewer, because so much of the film is going to take place in the car. And that's where the energy between Ernie and Joe was so important, because like I said, they're different, not enough, their ages were different. There was enough different that there was banter there. There was kind of banter, and that became obvious very quickly. So much so that we really could have done a blooper reel. There was so much funny stuff that we didn't use. But that was really important because I think it's a heavy topic, and you need this sense of decompression that I think they were getting through the kind of joking and the other things. So once I realized that, once I actually saw the footage, I thought this is going to be okay, because that was my biggest worry, was claustrophobia, that people couldn't kind of sit that long in a car for that long. And then, in fact, one of the best compliments I got was when we premiered it at South by Southwest. One of the mental health officers, Jessica Felt, said to me afterwards, she said, "Oh my God, that was great." She said, "But I feel like I was on a shift at work." Which I took as a real compliment. Like, it felt like she was doing her job while she watched the film. And I thought that was a great takeaway, that, you know, and that's what's been the best thing about this, is that the general public that knows nothing about it and law enforcement seem to be able to watch the film and get something important from it, which is beautiful, because that's what I would like for the whole damn country. But we can't do that yet, but it shows it can be done. And then the last thing I just wanted to say was something unexpected that was a challenge, was how to thread in officer wellness, because I wasn't sure it was going to play as large a role when I started the film, but it clearly was clear to me I'd had to do it. And I'm really glad. Like, I realized pretty early on that it was going to be important, and it was going to be thread throughout. I'll leave this with the last thing. The last biggest challenge is when you filmed all this amazing stuff, 300 plus hours of just really good stuff. I mean, the film could have been 5 hours, honestly. Nobody can watch that much. So you have to figure out, you have to collect all the gems, and then you end up having to get rid of a lot of gems, but you collect all the gems, and then you try to figure out what the story is that connects them all. And I had an amazing editor we sat in the room most of the time, a lot of the time together, kind of just banging out ideas and kind of finding that thread that would keep people engaged, but keep the story moving. And that's probably the biggest challenge, but hopefully we achieved what we wanted to do. So anyway,
well, I think you did. It won an Emmy for editing.
For editing, exactly. Ding, 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 ding.
And I think that that's a testament, honestly, because there were moments of that felt tight and a little claustrophobic, but then you'd cut to something where you were things were a lot more open. You're outside, you're moving around. So great job. I mean, you obviously were paying attention to it, and it really translated well. It really did. So,
and that's why we filmed. There's so much stuff that they're like, why are you filming us golfing? Why are you filming us getting our haircuts? Why are you filming? But it was like trying to find all this real stuff, because the idea is you're talking about two human beings, which is why that's why I stuck to my guns about the title being Ernie and Joe, not, you know, cops on the run or whatever, is that because I'm trying to get this idea across that we're all human beings. So the film is actually about human connection. Anyway, so when I needed all this stuff, but I wasn't sure how it would fit. And of course, you know, both my editor and I watched, she was like dying to keep the golf in. I was dying to keep the haircuts in, like, you know, and then we ended up using neither. But yeah, it was that idea of kind of having stuff outside the car and stuff that was more just real life, like who they are, what makes them tick, you know. So.
Well, if you would have used all of the footage of Joe playing golf, it would have been probably closer to 10 to 12 hours long. So it's a good thing that you didn't. Now
need to decompress sometimes.
Right, but not all the time, Joe. Take a little time to be serious, for crying out loud. Now I know, Ernie, I know you were on the mental health unit first and longer than Joe. I think a lot of people are interested to find out how, especially in the 8th largest city in the United States, how a mental health unit came to be, and how they were able to convince a police department that this was important enough to invest time and money, because money is a big deal for government agencies, right? Into, like, how did it grow and what did it grow from?
Yeah, so it grew from the idea from the CIT class that I went to. I knew right then that I thought San Antonio would be able to benefit from having a crisis intervention team unit, a mental health unit. I just didn't know how to do it. So, you know, I went to the chief's office. I had to get up through the chain of command, and I think I got as high as a deputy chief twice to sit down and have a meeting about the idea of a mental health unit. I wanted it to be officers in plain clothes. I wanted it to be officers driving unmarked cars, you know, blending in with the community. I wanted, you know, us to work very closely with the local mental health authority, and it wasn't going anywhere. It was stalling out. And it wasn't until I joined NAMI and became a board of director, and the NAMI family came together and said, well, we're about to have a legislative breakfast and the chief's invited. Why don't we just ask him there? And I'm like, well, okay, I'll probably lose my job for this, but I'm down for it. Just, I didn't have anything to do with this idea, please. And sure enough, we were sitting at the table with the, you know, legislators were there, and they were about to talk about the upcoming topics that they wanted to legislate for. And they asked the chief, you know, hey, have you given any consideration about starting a mental health unit? And he stood up at the podium and said, actually, I have, and I've got 2 officers in mind. And he kind of looked over at me, and I knew I was either in trouble or I was going to be on a mental health unit pretty soon. And he met me at the table after he got down there and said, all right, don't mess this up. And I chose a partner, and we just kind of had to figure it out as we went. We didn't have a unit. We didn't have a sergeant. So they just kind of put us in different units and moved us around based on our hours. So to make sure we had some kind of supervision. And the goal at first, Zach, was to try to alleviate officers out in the field, you know, that were on a mental health call, and we would take over and get them back into service. So we were trying to, you know, keep track of the data of how many officers we were relieving and how many man hours we were saving, and then taking over that mental health call. We thought, hey, that's going to be, you know, what we're going to do. We're going to make this serve the officers, and they're going to endorse us and want more of us. But what we realized very quickly was that the internal struggle on the department for mental health was very present but not seen. And we were starting to get referrals to go check on officers. And, you know, not only were we trying to relieve officers in the field from mental health calls and do follow-up calls, now we were having to respond to our own. And, you know, so there was a lot of logistics, a lot of moving parts to this. And, you know, we're trying to get all this figured out within a year. And that's when Joe and his partner, Ned, actually came on the unit. And it was a interesting time, because at that point, the chief said, well, this is working so good that I want every single officer trained in CIT training. And you're talking anywhere between 2,500 officers. And now you got 4 trainers to do 40 hours of training for everybody on the department. So it was tough, and we were asked to do a lot. We were challenged to do a lot, and we stepped up to every challenge. and the community responded because we were in the community going to meet them at whether it was a get together, whether it was the NAMI walk, a breakfast, a health fair, it didn't matter. We were going to be there and we were going to collaborate with the stakeholders within the community and make our presence known. So that's really what it was to get this thing up and started and get moving in the right direction.
Yeah, it's really important to get the community to understand what's going on and to see that it's happening, because again, it comes back to humanizing and gets buy-in from the community. And considering the community buy-in, what was, and this question's for both Ernie and Joe, what was the response from inside the agency, from fellow officers, from other units? Like, how long did it take a while for buy-in? And if it did, how did that buy-in come about?
Joe, I'd say it was difficult because now the chief mandated training for everybody on the department, and not just any kind of training, but mental health training, which in law enforcement is not sexy, right? That's not what people join the police department to do. And now the chief is saying, you're going to do this. And so it was difficult, but we realized, and I think Joe will talk about it, the officers that were most resistant to it were the officers that were most affected by mental health, whether it was somebody in their family, a loved one, a friend, where the system failed them. And, we found that out throughout the teaching and made a connection with them. And then the challenge was met and we just continued to do the training. And then we started getting responses of, hey, this was the best training I've ever had in my life. I wish we had this in the academy.
Right. And that's obviously how I fell into it by accident and then saw it and felt that way. So kind of piggybacking off of what Ernie's saying, Joe, do you think that CIT should be mandated, or do you think that it should be a volunteer or incentive-based deal where you have specialized officers that do specialized work, or mandate it to everybody and now you have guys with just a general knowledge of the procedure? Or is it should it be an agency by agency thing?
It should be 100% mandated, no questions asked. And again, while I understand this is my opinion, it's a very, very strong opinion. And now I do think that while the basic 40-hour CIT training should be mandatory, I do think it should be given in the training academies. But I think, and I saw a question earlier about corrections too. So I think it should happen in the training academy. I think they should get 40 hours of CIT training, but I also think that they should have to go through it again after they have 2 years on. But I don't think it should be voluntary, because again, a lot of people are going to avoid it because a lot of people are uncomfortable. A lot of police officers especially are uncomfortable in dealing with emotions. And it's because they lack so much emotional intelligence. But I think, making it mandatory is a necessity. What I do think should be specialized are mental health units. And again, I think this is just reimagining what community policing is. Community policing is something that's been around for so long, but no one really knows what it is. There's nothing, it's like certain cities, certain towns, certain places say we have community policing units. And it's like, well, what does that mean? And they do very different things. They just kind of do things that, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if anything's being measured. And I think having formalized mental health units, it doesn't have to be anything robust. I mean, like you mentioned, we are the 7th largest city in the country. We do have 2,400 officers sworn. Our unit's not huge. We're not 24 hours a day, sadly. We've been around for almost 13 years, but we're not 24 hours a day, or 12 years rather. We're not 24 hours a day. So you don't have to have like this robust 30-person unit. And for the smaller agencies, like in rural areas of Iowa, it's like, hey, create a task force. Like have one person from each county that like formulates this mental health task force team. But really all you're talking about when you're dealing with a specialized unit is somebody that fully understands the system, someone that understands the law, someone that understands like the rights of the patient, someone that understands like how you can intersect policy of policing and arresting, but like truly buying into the jail diversion concepts. And then someone that's willing to collaborate with and advocate for the stakeholders within the community. Because again, Iowa's doing some great things. I mean, Iowa is, while they are terrible when it comes to funding, in fact, they were dead last for a while, but they actually have relative decent capacity to care for people. And so it's just understanding what resources are available, because one of the things that we found was that a lot of officers for these agencies that work in these communities don't know one of two things. They either don't know what resources are available, or two, they don't know how the resources work. So they just know their names, but it's like, well, what happens if I go there? And it's like, I have no idea. And because that makes me uncomfortable, it's just easier to arrest. And like you said, Zach, it's a very simple thing to do, because that's what we're taught how to do is arrest the problem, arrest people. And when you have this type of unit, it really takes on a whole new mindset. And so you have to start looking at things very differently. And so again, mandate CIT training across the board. Yes, no argument. I don't, there's not one logical argument that I've ever heard of why it would not be a good idea. And I know the international CIT model is 20% of each agency, and it should only be for people that want to do it, because it's not for everyone. And I get they're trying to protect a brand, but I think it's so much more important than that. And I think, again, even if we change the name, don't call it CIT, let's just call it 40 hours of mental health training. I don't think the nomenclature matters. I think what matters is PERF's report still remains true. 58 hours on average spent on firearm manipulation and shooting, 8 hours on average nationally on communication and de-escalation. And as long as that continues to be the case, then you're going to continue to see the byproducts of officers who are trained with this certain type of mindset, which is the world's an inherently dangerous place. People are probably going to ambush you and kill you, and you need to be careful because the most important thing is going home. And it's like, at what point are you going to be willing to challenge that individually as your own person to say, yeah, maybe I was sold a little bit of a embellished story here. Like, maybe I haven't been killed yet. And well, yeah, but did you hear about the guy that was? And I think the last point, Zach, because I can talk forever, but I think data matters, right? And if we know that 48 officers killed in the line of duty, 44 by handgun, 236 final numbers of 2019, 236 officers died by suicide. So like, where's the real problem? And officers are not dealing with mental health. Departments are not supporting officers dealing with their own mental health. And so then the byproduct of that is there's a disconnect between the communities that they serve and their own struggles.
And if I could just chime in here, I from what I observed and from all the other places I talked to when I was making the film, just for background, I think it's really important to just not think that it's a police problem, just train all of the officers. I think that only works if you have a standalone mental health unit within the department, because then there's like experts in-house that a patrol person who's uncomfortable can call for a number of reasons. So I think that's really, really important, because a mental health unit, that's all they're doing. And the patrol officer is seeing lots of different things. And so they might not have that comfort level or the experience of having seen a lot yet. But if you have a mental health unit in-house, there's somewhere to go, or at least bounce off a question or ask for backup help or anything like that. And the other thing is making sure that the hospitals and the mental health authority and everybody else, as Joe mentioned, is on board, because it's just like saying leave it all to teachers. You can't leave it all to one group to fix larger problems. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
No, that's fantastic, because it's a good segue coupled with some things that Joe said. Since we're talking to NAMI today, what do you guys, Ernie and Joe, see as, especially with Ernie being a former NAMI board member, like, how can NAMI work with law enforcement groups to get trainings out there and to make sure people are getting the right kind of information?
Well, I mean, so a lot of them are doing it. A lot of them are requesting the screening of the film, I think, which is huge, because that puts out the information, that we do the training, and, continuing to partner with the law enforcement groups that provide the training. NAMI is a big part of the training. We bring them in and they do a family perspectives. They do an in our own voice presentation. We bring in, on Thursdays, we bring in really as many speakers as we can from a NAMI organization, and then put them up on the stage as a panelist to interact with the participants of the class. So partnering with law enforcement, if you have a NAMI organization within your city or county, is important. But then making sure that the leadership is aware of that too, of who you're partnering with. Who are your stakeholders? Who are the ones that are going to support you and help you, make your your unit successful, make your training successful. So it's all about, making partnerships and collaborating with your stakeholders.
Joe, you have anything to add?
Well, yeah, I mean, specific to NAMI, they're a huge part of every training. Again, the tagline is a good CIT training is officer-led, community-supported. And what I love about, the model that we've created in San Antonio and then the one that we've branched off and done privately is just that. Like still when we go to Iowa, it's always, I've been to places where, for example, when I go to Shreveport, Louisiana, well, they lost their local NAMI chapter. And the closest one is like in Lake Charles, several hours away. And so there's a huge gap when you don't have a local NAMI affiliate to partner with. It's such an important piece of the training. And so like when we were just there a couple weeks ago and, Dewey McConville comes down from the South Central area and because officers don't understand oftentimes what NAMI is and like what it entails. And again, that's not a slide on NAMI. It's just, you can show up and hand out a pamphlet, but if there's not like a training or an education course coupled with that, they kind of are like, well, what's the point of this? And so when you get time to spend, when you have an hour or 90-minute presentation to talk about NAMI, to talk about the programs they're doing, to give out information as a resource, they leave there feeling like, oh, wow, I had no idea. Like, I mean, so much of our feedback really is based on what is locally available in those certain areas. And so, again, NAMI is such an important piece of any sustainable program, right? I think training is important, but I think when you're talking about specific things to teaching police officers mental health training, it's important that they understand the resources that are there. And when you have partnerships with the stakeholders, that's what's going to allow you to have a sustainable program.
Right. And partnerships are a huge deal. I just saw a question come up in the Q&A section from Mike, and we use the phrase, what do you need now? What do you need today? And that's kind of what Mike's asking, I think, if I'm understanding him correctly. Like what kind of help do you need as you're working mental health unit, as you're working CIT? What help do you need from NAMI and from the community as a whole?
Well, I think that was specific to Mike's question about, is something being done nationally to push this out, or is someone working on this nationally? And I said, yeah, I need help. And what's up, June Klein-Bacon? Yeah, and I said, and I need help. So it takes champions, right? It takes advocates. I mean, NAMI is an advocate group, but it takes people on all sides, which is more than both sides. It really does take people on all sides. It takes people within law enforcement to champion and advocate for this. It takes the NAMI partners willing. It really does take a consistent willingness, and I think some consistency in messaging too. And as far as like me personally, like I need probably another 60 instructors that I can deploy around the country to help do what we're doing, because it's super important that when you look at the model, again, it's so simple. There's nothing like proprietary about any of this. It's really in the delivery, and it's in the insight and the wisdom and the willingness, or the ability rather, not the willingness, but the ability to connect things and to see like to go into a community, be able to look at what's happening, and then based on your experience say, oh, here's an idea. One of the biggest things that sticks out to me still, Zach, was in your area, and it was from Captain Herbst, and a 20-year captain of a department from that area. And he came up to me and he said, Joe, it blows my mind that you come up here from South Texas and you taught me about a resource for juveniles that I never knew existed. And I've been a police officer for over 20 years and I live here, and I never knew they existed until you come from Texas and introduce them to us. Why is that? And I said, it's because people are so uncomfortable having conversations, and Jen talks about this, and to us, I think it's something we take for granted, but she calls it the secret sauce. And the third Tuesday of every month, we have a community medical director roundtable meeting. And this is every hospital, inpatient, outpatient, the standalone ER, Bexar County Sheriff's Office, the police department, the fire department. Everyone's coming together and we're having tough conversations. Feelings get hurt. People get called out. But just like the director of that used to say, he says, transparency is the best disinfectant, right? And so when you're willing to show up and kind of show your hand, or you're forced to show your hand and say, like, what resources do you have? We get that you're a private for-profit business, but do you want to be a part of the community solution or not? And if you do, if you want to have a seat at the table, then you're going to have to hurt a little bit. Like, you're going to have to take some of the unfunded patients sometimes. And they've done it. They've continued to show up and help out. And so I think that's why San Antonio's model is so good. And it really is easily replicated in other areas if there's a willingness, and I think that's the big piece, is how is it being communicated? And then do you have the decision makers, not the third people removed from the decision makers, but do you have the actual decision makers at the table when these conversations are happening?
Yeah, can I just jump in for a second, because I felt very strongly about those roundtable meetings. In fact, I filmed 2 of them, and they never made the film because, like I said, it couldn't be 5 hours. And there were all these people that the viewers hadn't met yet, so it's kind of hard for them to connect the importance of those meetings. But I personally, while I was there, was hugely struck by that, which is why I mention it a lot when I talk about the film, because I also say I'm from New York City, where the police and the fire don't even get along, so to see an uncomfortable meeting sometimes, sitting around in person, not an email thread. Now, granted, it was pre-COVID, but they're sitting physically around a table and actually listening to why the police don't want to sit in an ER for 20 hours and why they were sent to a hospital that had no beds. And vice versa. The police and then the hospital can say, well, don't send them to me because we don't have the bed. Like, they were actually airing their own personal stuff, and in a context where it could be heard. And I think that's why I always call it the secret sauce, because if you don't have that, if you just run around and train everyone, but you don't have any context, it's very hard for people to feel that it's a meaningful endeavor. And the last thing I would say is, in every single film I made, I think the biggest thing that people are afraid of is change. I did a film in Northern Ireland in the heat of the Troubles. They were blowing up everybody. Everyone was blowing up and totally segregated. And I remember talking to a parent who was trying to open an integrated school for Catholics and Protestants. And she said, I truly believe what we're really afraid of in this country is change, not terrorism. And that always struck with me. And the same thing in the prison. Like, what do you mean you're going to let these women see their kids? What are you, nuts? They're in here for a reason. They shouldn't be seeing their children, because it was different. It was change. It wasn't what was normally done. And I feel that way about this film too.
That's right. Change is a huge barrier to anything. Human beings do not like change.
Right.
Now, there's some people that are adventuresome and they like to see something different happen every day, but generally that's not how people are programmed. So how do you guys, and how did you guys deal with, obviously this was a culture change, right? How did you deal with people who said you're not being tough enough on crime, or the police aren't the right people for this work, we're not social workers? How did you guys address that interdepartmentally with your peers, with the general public? I mean, obviously we know that these things have been said repeatedly. How did you guys deal with that?
Well, right off the bat, the training, when we started, we got paired up with clinicians from the local mental health authority. And what we found very quickly was, you're absolutely right. We were not trained to correctly deal with these mental health crises, regardless of the 40-hour CIT training. So for almost 2 years to respond to these mobile crisis calls that would come into the crisis center, that these clinicians would respond to, and they would ride with us or follow us out to the call, and we would have to listen to their assessments. And then the light started, that's that aha moment of, oh, this is why they're asking these questions. I had no idea. I only asked, are you feeling suicidal, homicidal? And that's really all I knew to ask. But then they enter this whole nother area of mental decompensation. And we had to learn all about that and what the dangers were for that. Then they would call the doctor from the scene, and we would listen to the call between the clinician and the doctor, the dialogue, the language is almost like learning a brand new language for us, the mental health part of it. So, right now I'm in a program where I'm paired up with a clinician and a paramedic. So when we go out as a team, we pre-engage the crisis because we've already identified that this particular individual is one that calls quite a bit and gets involuntarily committed. So now we go out, pre-engage the crisis, bring a clinician and a paramedic to address any and all needs, and then close the gap for services, because we have a doctor assigned to this unit. We've got money that's not earmarked for anything in particular, like a grant, so we can use it for medications, transportation. We help with ID recovery. We try to close any gap that there would be to barrier of treatment. And what we've seen is a decline in those involuntary commitments on the highest utilizers in San Antonio. So you have to almost have a hybrid system in place to be extremely successful embedded within the department, alongside having a mental health unit that can help and respond to patrol as well.
And by partnering with those clinicians, it's a great effort, and they are the experts, and there's a question, Leslie asked a question about whether if I'm picking up what she's laying down, whether it's better to have the law enforcement or the mental health team reach out to NAMI for assistance, or would it be better for NAMI to come to the agencies and say, hey, here's what we offer, here's what we can do. As a couple of guys who have worked in law enforcement for a while, what do you think is the more efficient use of a connection with NAMI? Having NAMI reach out to the agencies, or having just assign a couple guys that could go network with NAMI and work it out?
I think it has to come from inside the department. Again, I think it's a sad reality. I think it's unfortunate, but I think if NAMI just shows up at the police department, they're going to get, the customary treatment. And it's, oh, thank you so much. This is great. We'll take your pamphlets. We'll hand them out. This is good. Oh, you want to talk to the guys at roll call? Cool. And they'll let you do it. But like, what does that lead to? Right. I think it's better than nothing, but I think what would be better is that if it was an inside out job, right? And so I think if you had people within the department that understood the value, understood the need, and then they went and advocated, they went out to NAMI and said, okay, this is the plan of attack. We want to bring you in. And now you have people that are inside that have those reputations, that have the relationships. And now they can say, hey, look, it's kind of like, she's with me type thing. And because trust is such a, skepticism is so high in law enforcement, especially right now. And so anyone that's coming in to offer anything, there's like this, I don't know, what are you doing? Why are you telling me, of course you think this, or of course you're going to tell me to do my job differently. And there's so much pushback. And so I think it would be way more effective and sustainable if you have internal advocates going out to find these partners and then bringing them in to then, because it's just going to be so much faster to develop that trust and that relationship.
Yeah, excellent. So, I think the short version of that really is don't be frustrated, because it's not you, it's us. It's that culture change from the inside of the way law enforcement works and the way that things are approached, that if we can start getting, even for us, what I've seen when we've had these 40-hour schools is, you have 20 guys and girls go through these schools, and not every person's going to be 100% bought in. Everybody's going to get something of it. But what you need is those 4 or 5 proponents, those people that are going to go back to their agency and sing the praises and be like, hey, I volunteer to go to the meeting at the hospital. I volunteer to talk to our jail social worker. I volunteer to do this. And that's really powerful. And so don't get frustrated, folks, that things aren't working as cohesively as you like, because basically you have to, it's like dealing with children, right? You have to make them think it's their idea, and they're going to be more likely to sell it to you.
Zach, just to jump on that, I was just out in California doing a training last week, and when NAMI came, I invited them to come and speak, to the officers. What they requested to do was ask for a liaison within the department, right? Like kind of what Joe's talking about. And NAMI would check in with them once a month with that liaison, give them updates about maybe some new treatment facilities, maybe some medications, whatever NAMI was getting that they normally get for their monthly meetings, and giving that to that officer, that liaison, who could then distribute that out to the officers. And sometimes they bring in information cards to hand out with some phone numbers, office managers to different type of treatment facilities. And it was a really good idea. And NAMI made that connection up in California with that department that I was training. And that was an excellent idea, because I haven't seen that, done on that level, especially for a smaller department like that can have that type of liaison.
And find somebody who volunteers to be that liaison, they're going to be far more likely to be cooperative, and to be interested in the information that's being pushed out. So that's great. We're getting real close. We got about 10 minutes left before we wrap up. And there's been one question that's been rephrased several different ways throughout the Q&A. And I think it's a really important question, especially for the people that have seen all 90 minutes of the show. We got invested in your guys' lives, right? And one thing that people are wondering is how you deal with the, the cumulative secondary stress and trauma of everything that you guys see and saw on a regular basis, what's your personal wellness? How do you self-care, and how do you deal with some frankly terrible things that you've seen in your line of work and stay healthy?
Joe, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I mean, I resigned, so that's a starting point for me. Is I left, and honestly, part of it was a mental health decision, and I'm absolutely aware of the cumulative effects of stress, and I am very acutely aware and have a lot of insight into what happens when things go left undone. Now, therapy has been a big part of my life. I think it always will be. It's just maintenance for me at this point. I look forward to it. I really learned so much, but one of the biggest benefits of me going to therapy for the amount of years I have has been the lessons that I've learned about helping myself that I can then use to help other people, right? And so I know it's what made me so effective at the job. I know it's what makes me so effective as an instructor teaching this stuff is because of my insight and wisdom to all of this. But specifically as far as like what I mean, because in fact, I created this 6 pillars of self-care for first responders that I teach at the schools now. And when I was doing it here at our academy in San Antonio before I left, it was just so powerful to see how the officers would connect with it, to see one of their own up there being vulnerable, sharing their story, and then saying like, "Hey," and I've seen it in the thing too earlier. Is I also think ACEs should be a mandatory part of any CIT training. And for those that don't have CIT training, ACEs is just a great place to start. I think it's such an important class when done right for officers to understand their own score, how it impacts how they see people, and how it can better, like how they can use that to better connect with other people. But specifically, when I teach this class on 6 pillars, people really do connect with it, and it kind of blows their mind open of like, holy crap, I can't believe that you would share some of that stuff, and like, or how could you stand up there in front of us? Was the last feedback I just got. And say those things. And I said, it's because I know that there's someone in this room that's suffering through something in silence, that is terrified to say anything about it. And they're going to continue to buffer through their life to avoid the emotion and just pretend that they've got it all figured out because they're gainfully employed. They have a job, they've got insurance, they have a home. And so all is well when they're absolutely miserable. And so to me, it is very personal. But as far as like specifically, what do? I start every morning in gratitude. In fact, my wife and I have a show called The Daily Gig. That's gratitude, inspiration, and goal. We do it every morning on Facebook Live and YouTube. And then I play a lot of golf. Like you said, since I've left, I left September 24th. We're now mid-November. I've probably played 20 rounds of golf. In fact, I was playing this morning, and it's why I was like 2 minutes late, which I apologize for. But to me, it's super important because I'm outside, I'm getting vitamin D, I'm spending time with great people, and I'm doing the thing that I really, really love, which is golf. It's usually 4 hours of just disconnecting. And yeah, so therapy, golf, gratitude, and just spending time with good people, it just, that aren't cops, honestly, the sociologists refer to it as your in-group. And so challenge yourself to spend time with people that aren't exactly like you, doing the same thing, living the same life, and kind of see how your world gets opened up a bit.
I think for me, Zach, I think it's, it's healthy habits, it's working out, spirituality, family. I'm very connected, with all three of that. Like Joe said, it's having good personal relationships. I don't have a therapist, but I actually speak to a life coach that's really, very intuitive to things of the world, actually, and kind of showing you a path and a direction, that you may not see. So, having somebody to talk to, somebody that you trust, somebody that you're not really connected to within like Joe said, another officer, something outside of that is good. It's finding quiet time too, just time to, just put the world on hold for just a few minutes, each day and practice that gratitude and that mindfulness is, it's a lifesaver for sure.
a lot of people don't understand, especially in law enforcement, that they got to take care of themselves. You got to save yourself. It's that old oxygen mask on the plane thing. You got to put that mask on yourself before the little kid next to you. Because if you don't put that mask on yourself, you're not gonna be there to help somebody else. So it's really important. Jenifer, you were with these guys for like 3 years. So that means you were riding in the car with them. You were kind of through osmosis getting some of that secondary and cumulative trauma, and you may not have realized you're going to sign on for that. How did you decompress after the whole project? I mean, I know coming from a creative world, like I always got sick after a play. Like the play would close and I'd get sick. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting analogy. You know, I really, well, I wasn't with them every day of 3 years. I kind of popped in and out. And because their energy was so good, and I felt very safe in what they were doing. And I had kind of built this great team. Our crew, Austin-based team, was just great to work with. And I had this amazing editor back, just always dying to hear what was happening and all. So I kind of felt like it was this little mini crew that over time, and like I said, I was pretty reserved. I didn't kind of want to say, I love you guys, because that would have showed my hand. But I did want to, but I felt very comfortable. But it was a weird letdown. It's strange to be so immersed in something for that long. I mean, the whole thing from start to finish took over 3 years. And then it's suddenly over, which is why the fact that I care so much about outreach is great, because I'm so happy you were talking about takeaways, like what they can do in the training, because what I really want these kind of discussions to do is get the participants thinking, who else outside of NAMI should see this? Who else outside of NAMI that I know should have this conversation? Who can I find out who can introduce me to local law enforcement? How can we move this forward? And that kind of helps that grieving of this project you love and care about, because you know that it's kind of bringing goodness, hopefully, you know, hope into the world. So yeah, so that's where I stand. But and thank you so much for moderating this. You're awesome. They should ask you every year.
I'll do it every year. I got nothing going on. I have play with toys and video games. I got no life.
Sheriff, stay in his cabin.
Yeah. So with just a couple minutes left, I think, you know, again, I come back to the fact that we were all invested, you know, through the documentary, and we learned a lot about you. So starting with Jenifer, because, you know, you're on to your next project, I'm sure, because I know how creatives work. We're lunatics. I want to know.
I'm the latter.
I want to know from all three of you, you know, what's next. Jenifer, what's your next project? Ernie, I know you're getting close to retirement, buddy. I know you talked about it, and I can see the bigger your smile gets, the closer to retirement you got to be getting, right? So what's next for you? And then Joe, you know, what's next for you? What are you doing? And where can people get CIT training? We're going to start with Jenifer and work around the horn.
Okay. Well, the first thing is I feel a little bit, like I said, it's like my third child, or if you count all the films, my sixth child. So I kind of won't be happy until I feel like this baby is off to college, knows what the hell it's doing, and is, you know, going to do good in the world, like is set. And so I just want to make sure, and now I have a great outreach team in place, and we're really trying to knock it out of the park. And when you talk about who can help us, now I'm really focused on national partners. So if I can get national partners on board. So I have a little more work to do there. And then I have a possible short in the hopper about the history of the 911 call, because it started in a little town in Alabama. And some of those guys are still alive, and they have these great stories about the first calls they made, and telling over the phone how to help a baby that was struggling breathing using 2 fingers on the chest, and then hearing the baby cry through the phone. And as soon as I heard that story, I was like, wow, again, the human side of why this thing starts and where we've ended up. Where, you know, some people feel it's weaponized, some people feel it's inaccurate, some people, whatever. But it's an interesting, to me, an interesting history. And I only think of it as a short, but I just thought it would be kind of interesting for the world to see how it started. And they basically, this little town in Alabama was trying to beat AT&T from getting the contract. So it's just a curious little, and I thought it'd be nice to do something short for a change. instead of 3-4 years.
You deserve it. You deserve a little bit of a break, and because everybody knows a short isn't any work at all, right?
Oh, nothing
Nothing at all. All right, Ernie, what's next for you, buddy?
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, retirement's in the near future. I started a training company with a partner out of Washington, D.C., who specializes in social intelligence, emotional intelligence, and, adding procedural justice and unconscious biases to the training of de-escalation and mental health. We've taken that training on the road. We've been out to California, going to Colorado, and then Dr. Darren Porcher, the Fox News analyst, has got us in with a meeting for NYPD next. So we're very excited and hoping to be able to take that training out to New York. And, it's hard to keep up right now with both. So I'm going to have to make a decision here pretty soon. So stay tuned. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, good luck to you. It's awesome to meet you. I've been waiting a while to at least be able to say hi in person, I guess. So
Yeah,
it's good
pleasure.
to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Joseph.
What's up, man? What's next? I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Obviously, again, I started Solution Point Plus in 2017, and it really was just something that I felt good on having on the side of my career. And then there was a shift in 2019 where this became more important to me. It became a bigger priority to me, and it really aligned a lot better with my just personal ethos, right? And so as far as what's next, I'm just going to continue to grow. Again, Iowa keeps us incredibly busy, and so I'm grateful to your state. But I really have a big picture mindset. And so I would love to, we're talking about starting an academy where we can hire a bunch of trainers that we can deploy out under our methodologies to deliver the content I really want to affect change. That's what's important to me. I want to eradicate suicide within first responders. I want military, active duty and veterans to stop killing themselves. I want police officers to stop killing themselves. And I think we have to be very, very aggressive in how we tackle this. And I think that there's a strategy that exists to help get towards that. And so that's really what I want to be a part of and do while I still, because again, I think latest numbers are still maybe 60% of police agencies of the 18,000 departments that exist, 60% of them don't have CIT training. And so there's a huge gap there. And while I love doing it, I think it's important for me not to get too bogged down in the weeds. And I want to allow other people to do that while I'm trying to do things from a different lens. And so I'm super excited about some opportunities coming up, both locally and nationally. And so I'm just going to keep grinding it out, man, and see where it goes. So I'm living my best life, Zach. So I get to golf and help people. And so I can't ask for anything else.
And vacation in Iowa, because that's what everybody wants to do, right? Joe? That's where everybody wants to come for their free weeks, right? Awesome. Well, listen, Jenifer, thank you so much for being such a champion for humanizing law enforcement and for helping us with the culture change that we so badly need, and for telling the story of how law enforcement really can help people and affect change in their communities. So thank you. You're my hero. This is a story that hadn't been told, and thank you so much for making this film.
Oh, thank you so much.
And Ernie, thank you for again, nice to meet you, and thank you for being a subject and opening your life to this film and telling the story from the law enforcement standpoint and helping our culture change, because we have to change it from the inside. And you know that, I know that, Joe knows that. So thank you very much for everything. And Joseph,
I love you too.
I love you, buddy. I love you. I'll talk to you soon, and thank you for everything.
Thank you, NAMI, for having us.
Hey, Peggy.
Hey.
That's to you now, Peggy, I think.
Yeah. So Ernie and Joe, you are my heroes. Jenifer, you are my heroine. I cried like a baby when I first saw this film. And then I watched it 2 more times and I cried some more. And then I even had to cry today when I just saw 25 minutes of it. So you have touched people. And I'm so thankful for your outreach to NAMI and for saying, we want to do something with you. I hope this leads to much more, because together we can make change with people like Zach too, and we're like Sheriff Thompson and many others in Iowa. You know, I know that in Iowa, we don't know for sure how many people have been trained in CIT. They just started doing it at the academy 2 years ago. But we know that, I know I did some trainings around the state while not that long ago, and I was with law enforcement officers who did not even know what CIT is. So we have a lot of work to do, especially with small police forces around the state.
Yeah.
So thank you, thank you, thank you. And please stay safe and continue to do your life-changing work. I also, this is the closing, everybody. So I wanted to tell you that we had about 225 people listening for most of this session. So you got way beyond NAMI people. And I think you saw that in the chat box. We had nurses and social workers and law enforcement people and human services administrators, hospital people, lots of different folks from around the state who heard this, and that's exactly what we wanted. So it's wonderful. So thank you again to our sponsors, Janssen Pharmaceuticals, Johnson & Johnson, and AmeriGroup, because of their sponsorships. And also, by the way, we asked for free will donations and we received over $1,000. So thank you to the people who gave us a donation. We were able to offer this for free. And that was wonderful. So we appreciate that. We have recorded all the sessions. The videos will be uploaded and sent out on Monday. Don't forget about our film festival. The full-length version of Ernie and Joe Crisis Cops is available. The link, you need to see that. And also the other two films, Bedlam and Orchestrating Change. 3 very different documentaries, all related to mental health, all very good. So take advantage of that. The Bedlam and Orchestrating Change are available through tomorrow, and the Ernie and Joe link will be live through Sunday. Evaluations, we will be sending out a survey link, and we really hope that you do your evaluation. We would love to hear your thoughts and feedback, what we did well and what we could do better. And I'll just I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't do this one last plug. If you didn't get a chance to make a contribution, but you enjoyed your day, you can go to our website and make a contribution to NAMI Iowa. Fundraising in the age of COVID is hard, and we were happy to bring this to you, but if you feel so inclined, we would appreciate and love your support. Thank you again, Ernie, Joe, Jenifer, and Zach. You are heroes. We appreciate you being with us today. And thank you to all of us who have joined us today. It's been a wonderful day of education and inspiration. And we hope to see you all again soon. Thank you.
I just want to say the film is available till Monday. For
Monday, sorry, till Monday.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenifer.
So much.
Okay.
Thanks, Peggy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.